Welcome back to the Emily Show, Law Nerd. This week we have a lot of updates because, well, you've probably been in court with me, and if you haven't, you're probably catching up on the case briefs every day because it has been a very busy week one in the Corey Richins trial out of Utah. But a lot has happened in other cases that we've been covering, and we need to talk about it today. Nick Reiner was back in court. We're going to take a look at that. And the DA of LA County gave a statement afterwards. We're going to break down what that means and what comes next in the Nick Reiner prosecution. We also have a few Nancy Guthrie updates. We have much to talk about there. Few updates, but still much to talk about. And there are some new videos from Savannah Guthrie that give us an idea of where this investigation is now. And we haven't talked about this case on the podcast yet. But for those of you who follow the streams quite a bit, there is a very important verdict that we need to talk about that came in Idaho this week. If you are not familiar with that TikToker and the TikTok case, I will give you the TLDR so that we can get into talking about the verdict because I'm not done talking about it yet. And I have some thoughts about the Traitors finale. I'm going to do that at the very end. I'm going to try to give my thoughts in a non-spoilery way. I am not going to talk about who won or whom won or whose ever wins. I have some thoughts. So for those of you that have seen Traitors, amazing. For those of you that are like, Emily, what are we talking about? A TV show that I love, and it had its finale, and we're there. We have to talk about it. So we've got a little bit of a criminal docket and a civil docket with the TikTok updates and the pop culture docket because I freaking love Traitors. So let's get into it. I'm legal analyst Emily D. Baker. Yes, also a lawyer. And this is The Emily Show. I break down the pop culture, entertainment, and high-profile cases that we're all talking about. I know you want the facts, so let's get into it. With the Nick Reiner case, you may remember that back in December 2025, he was charged with 2 counts of special circumstances murder for the killing of his parents, Rob and Michelle Reiner. He has not been arraigned yet. We have seen him in court. We have seen him in court numerous times. Remember, there was like 30 seconds when Alan Jackson was his attorney, and then the case was handed over to the LA County Public Defender's Office, and then the arraignment was put over. The arraignment has been put over numerous times at this point. Well, he was back in court for arraignment. We are going to take a look at that arraignment together, and we are going to take a look at the DA's statement afterwards. This is a special circumstances murder case out of Los Angeles. He is charged with 2 counts of special circumstance murder, plus special allegations, use of a weapon. Part of the special circumstance here is multiple murders, but there are other special circumstances that could be added. That means that the LA DA's office at some point will have to make the choice whether or not they will pursue this as a death penalty case or as a life without the possibility of parole case. We are still very early days in this prosecution for that decision to be made. So we are going to go to court in Los Angeles, still in the arraignment court that we have seen before. And now that he's been arraigned, that will get assigned out to a more permanent home. I would imagine still downtown, given the unit that is handling the case. So still downtown in that courthouse in the criminal courts building.
Case number 25 CJC F08098.
Good morning, Your Honor. The Green Deputy Public Defender on behalf of Mr. Reiner. He's present in court in custody.
Thank you.
Chuck, the people, Your Honor. Good morning, Your Honor. The VPI to the people.
Thank you and good morning.
And you heard the defense attorney say present in court in custody. Yes, this is the first time they have allowed recording of Nick Reiner in court. So they do show him in court in custody and do the nuts and bolts of the arraignment.
Good morning to each of you. Good morning, Mr. Reiner. And how would you like to proceed at this time, counsel? The court has, and I'll just make a record, we addressed the request for media coverage off the record. Court just orders that there's no live streaming and no live transmission and no filming of anyone in the gallery.
And they did that.
We'd like to go forward with the arraignment at this time.
Thank you. And on behalf of Mr. Reiner, do you waive full reading of the complaint, advisement of rights, including armed forces and veterans' rights, enter a plea of not guilty, denying any and all special allegations, enhancements, and priors?
Yes, Your Honor.
A plea of not guilty is entered on behalf of Mr. Reiner. Counsel's requesting
April 29th as 0 of 30.
April 29th, 2026 as a 0 of 30 calendar days.
All right, so what does all of that mean? Well, they waived formal reading of the complaint. We've already looked at the complaint against him. We've talked about the charges against him, any and all special allegations. Those are the things that make it a special circumstance murder or aggravated murder, the murder plus. Also, we see that they have set a date as a 0 of 30 calendar days. That is a date for preliminary hearing. That does not mean the preliminary hearing will go forward 30 days from that next court date on April 29th, 2026, but that sets the timeline to go forward to preliminary hearing. We saw preliminary hearings in the Corey Richins case and some others. A lot of the cases I've covered, they have gone forward by indictment, by grand jury. The preliminary hearing is a more public process. You can attend and watch preliminary hearings. They bring in witnesses. The defense is there and participates in the preliminary hearing. So that is the first phase before a case is held over for trial. So they're setting it for a 0 of 30. The preliminary hearing can go forward in 30 days, but it also can get put over beyond that. So this is truly the nuts and bolts of an arraignment. They're not arguing bail or bond on this date. They're entering nothing but a not guilty plea, denying all allegations, setting the next date.
Yes.
And may I take a waiver from your client at this
Yes,
time?
sir.
Mr. Reiner, you are entitled to a speedy preliminary hearing. That's a preliminary hearing within 10 court days and 60 calendar days of your arraignment. Your arraignment is today. Do you understand, waive, and give up those rights so that your matter may be continued to April 29th, 2026 as a 0 of 30 calendar days, with the understanding that your preliminary hearing may commence within 30 calendar days of April 29th?
Yes.
And does counsel join in that waiver?
I do.
The court finds that Mr. Reiner.
So there was a speedy preliminary hearing waiver. You heard the judge tell Nick Reiner what his rights were. You have the right to a preliminary hearing within 10 days, within 60 days of your arraignment, but you're giving that up. We're setting this as a 0 of 30 and going forward from there. So yes, waiving the right to a speedy preliminary hearing, not unusual in a special circ case because the defense needs more time to go through, and the defense oftentimes would rather have live witnesses come in than just have an officer that's the investigating officer come in and say, this is essentially what everybody is saying. So I'm not surprised that that preliminary hearing is getting set out a little bit and that speedy preliminary hearing has been waived. What I will note on that is that does not bump back the speedy trial because that is a timeline that starts after the preliminary hearing. So waiving speedy preliminary hearing doesn't necessarily waive the speedy trial right. Once you get to preliminary hearing, if that preliminary hearing is held over, then the speedy trial right starts. So that clock starts afterwards.
And does counsel join in that waiver?
I do.
The court finds that Mr. Reiner has made a knowing and intelligent waiver of his right to a speedy preliminary hearing within 10 court days and 60 calendar days, and that his counsel of record joins in that waiver. Defendant agrees that the next court date of April 29th, 2026 is a 0 of 30 calendar days. The matter is assigned to, for all purposes, by the supervising judge of the criminal master calendar. The matter is assigned to, for all purposes, to Judge Sam Oda in Department 108. Counsel reserve.
So that's been assigned to Judge Oda, and then it will go to that court for all purposes. Yes, cases can get reset for trial, but that's assigned by the master calendar court, normally by the last digits of the case.
Yes, sir.
It's bail set at no bail. Anything further in this case?
Yes, for the record, Your Honor, people have turned over to the defense the large
And now you're going to hear from the prosecution just a little bit.
bulk of discovery. We are still awaiting word from the coroner's office that they've completed the autopsy report. As soon as we get it, we will turn it over from the defense as well as any other discovery that comes in.
Thank you. Anything further?
Your Honor, I addressed with the court the issue of the outstanding SCTs. We're asking that those.
So what the prosecution said, it was a little bit hard to hear, but what the prosecution said is that they have turned over all discovery. They are just still waiting on final autopsy reports from the coroner's office. And once they have those will be turned over to the defense. And then we go back to the defense attorney to handle one more matter.
Your Honor, I addressed with the court the issue of the outstanding SCTs. We're asking that those be withdrawn at this time.
And those.
So what is the defense asking for? The defense is asking for the remaining SDTs to be withdrawn. Those are subpoenas ducis tecum. This defense attorney did not send out those subpoenas. We heard about those in the prior arraignment date, and the prior arraignment date SDTs were sent out by attorney Alan Jackson. So she is asking to withdraw those. We don't need those now. Those can be withdrawn from the court. They are not binding over. So that's this defense attorney's choice to not leave those subpoenas outstanding. Those had been under seal. We do not know what those subpoenas are for, but last hearing with Alan Jackson, 2 attorneys were in court representing individuals that had been subpoenaed. So I don't know if those were subpoenas for individuals or subpoenas for documents. They could be either, but they were also sealed. So I tend to think they were likely subpoenas for individuals. And if I had to guess, I would guess it was individuals that were with Nick Reiner in the 24 hours leading up to his parents' death, which leads me to believe it's likely individuals probably from Conan O'Brien's party and the timing around that. So at this point, this defense attorney is withdrawing those so they don't need to stay outstanding. But again, that is speculation on my part as to what those subpoenas would be for. And it might be a little cart before the horse for this defense attorney to start pursuing those interviews at this point.
Those subpoenas, as referenced by the defense, are withdrawn, ordered withdrawn.
So those are withdrawn.
Thank you. Anything further?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So going to the statements of the elected Los Angeles district attorney.
My name is Nathan Hockman. I'm the district attorney of Los Angeles County. Joining me here is the prosecutor for the case, Habib Balian. I'll give you a couple.
Just dump this case on Habib by himself. Okay. I mean, sure, more than capable. They had like 3 DAs that they put on the record at the last hearing, but it's clear that DA Balian's going to be the lead prosecutor on this case and is there with the other kind of command structure from the major crimes unit, which is the unit that Alan Jackson used to be the head deputy of.
Different update points. First, the case is on track. We have provided the bulk of discovery to defense counsel, and we are now waiting for the coroner's report. When that is provided to the district attorney's office, it will in turn be provided to defense counsel. The second point.
And I'm sure your question is, Emily, we talked about this case a while ago. We talked about the fact that the physical autopsies had been completed. Yes, the physical autopsies had been completed. However, the coroner's report has a lot of other parts beyond the physical autopsies, including sending things out for lab analysis, sending things out for tox screenings, which are going to be done in any autopsy, and writing up the actual report. So even though the autopsy may be complete and the cause of death may be determined, there are still parts of that report that aren't done yet. From December to now, am I surprised by that? No, I'm not surprised by that. A, the LA Coroner's Office does quite a lot of autopsies. B, lab reports can get backed up and take a little bit more time to come in, even though the cause and manner of death were already determined. And we did talk about that on the prior podcast, but the manner of death for both Rob and Michelle Reiner was homicide, and the cause of death for both were multiple sharp force injuries. When you're waiting for the coroner report, you're waiting for all of the photos from the autopsy and then the full written report of everything they saw, all the measurements, etc.
This case is a death penalty eligible case. Along those lines, we take the process in which we determine whether or not the death penalty should be sought extremely seriously, and it goes through a very rigorous process. We will be looking at all aggravating and mitigating circumstances.
I'm going to pause that right there and give just a little bit of background on it. Of course, my perception on this is a bit skewed because I worked with the LA County District Attorney's Office. I think this process for determining eligibility or whether an office decides to seek eligibility is a good one. Ultimately, the decision is with the elected DA. However, they do an incredibly thorough process that also involves the defense attorney. So the defense is allowed to present information to the panel, is allowed to bring in things in mitigation, background circumstances that the DAs might not know, and is allowed to have that conversation with the district attorney's office and present things for them to consider. And those things can be medical records, mental health records, other circumstances that may be unknown as part of the investigation, to ask the district attorney's office to consider not pursuing the death penalty. And yes, even though there is a moratorium in California on the carrying out of the death penalty, that can change if governors change. California still does have a death penalty. So it is still a punishment that can be sought, even if someone sentenced to death row won't always have that carried through on, and hasn't in quite a long time in California. However, the process of going through a panel and having that really thorough vetting involves more than just the elected DA making a decision. It is an incredibly thorough process. And I imagine that he will be talking about that a little bit more, but it is not a quick decision, and it is not a decision in a closed room just made with the elected DA, maybe the lead investigator, and maybe the lead prosecutor. There are many more people involved in that decision at the LADA's office.
And we have invited defense counsel to present to us, both in writing and orally in a meeting, any arguments that they would like to make in consideration for our going forward or not going forward with the death penalty. So that is an ongoing process. We will also, at that point, when we get all this information, it will be subject to not only a rigorous analysis, but many of the most experienced individuals in the DA's office with death penalty experience will be helping me evaluate that information. The third point, with dates. Right now, the next date is April 29th for a preliminary hearing setting date. What will happen is that at that date, the judge has said it is 0 of 30 days. That translation, that means that within 30 days of that April 29th date, there will be a preliminary hearing unless additional time is sought by defense counsel,
unless the defense has to continue
by the court, and the defendant agrees to also waive time.
Which is possible.
One can probably expect that there will be that additional time sought because of the volume of the discovery that will have to be gone through by defense counsel, by the fact that we're still waiting for the coroner's report, and by the fact that if defense counsel wants to seek any additional expert testimony, it will certainly take additional time. So that is the update on this case. Again, as we go through this process, we will provide you with more updates. But thank you very much today.
Has Mr. Reiner undergone any mental competency exams?
And I won't be answering any questions today. Thank you.
The PIO said that. The media is still going to yell questions at you. Even if you say there's no questions, they're still going to yell questions at you. So at the end of the day, the expectation is that even though the preliminary hearing is set for a 0 of 30, that it will likely be put out beyond that 0 of 30 date. That does not surprise me. They are not going to have a determination on what punishment will be sought at that time. And I am sure there are many in the media talking about whether or not Nick Reiner will plead not guilty by reason of insanity, or NGI as it is called in California. It is way too early in the process for any of that. That is a determination that will get made down the road. I talked about that in prior podcasts, but it is a admission of the event and then saying, but not legally culpable for it. It is way too soon prior to preliminary hearing for that to be a consideration. The defense is going to want to bring in experts and medical experts, review the autopsies, speak with the district attorney's office, and more. So it is too early in the process for any of that. And this is going to take time. And we will see when we get closer to May, when they actually set a preliminary hearing date. And I think that the preliminary hearing in this case, we could expect maybe a day or two of preliminary hearing. I don't expect it would be much longer than that, but we will see. If there is a preliminary hearing in this case, and if the judge allows it to be recorded, it may or may not be streamed. It may or may not be recorded. It really goes judge by judge in Los Angeles. Some allow it, some don't. I hope that in a high-profile case, they don't want all the media fighting to get into their courtroom, and hope that if there is just a pool camera, it will reduce the amount of people trying to get into court and maybe not disrupt their courtroom so much, but we will just have to wait and see. So that is the update on the Reiner prosecution. I will keep you up to date. I know a lot of you are interested in this case. It is going to be a long process, as many multiple homicide cases are. And speaking of cases that may unfortunately just take some time, we need to do some updates on the Nancy Guthrie investigation. I have been keeping an eye on it. A lot of what I have seen, I have just filtered out because it is purely speculative. There is not a lot of new known facts, and it looks like we're going to be getting into the part of this case where there are not a lot of new known facts. So let's take a look at what we know. Let's take a look at what's changed. And there are a few updates from Savannah Guthrie that we will look at. But as we are getting into now more than 3 weeks of Nancy Guthrie going missing, and by the time this podcast goes live, even though it's recorded a bit in advance, by the time this goes live, she will have been missing for over a month, which is absolutely devastating to her family that still does not have answers, as it is to any family of someone that is missing that just does not have those answers. But what I think we will start to see is that we will start to see a shifting of resources, and this investigation is going to move more into the digital evidence, because I don't know how much more physical evidence there is for them to look for. They are releasing the Guthrie home back to the Guthrie family. They have done everything it seems that they need to do inside the home. They have had multiple rounds of investigators, including district attorneys and district attorneys' investigators, out to Nancy's home before they turned it over. They have had FBI crime scene in the home. They have had Pima County Sheriff's crime scene in the home. They have searched in the area around her home, but there isn't a lot of physical investigation in and around the home that seems to be left. They also moved all of the media out. It seems that the no parking zone that they created was very much intended to move the media that was camped out in front of Nancy Guthrie's home, well, away from Nancy Guthrie's home. And it seems to have worked, though as news cycles change, I imagine we will no longer see very much media outside of Nancy Guthrie's home at all. But when we take a look, so when we are looking at the Pima County Sheriff's website, they have created a no parking zone and a no parking zone map that encompasses quite a lot of the area around Nancy Guthrie's home. And looking at a more zoomed in version of that map, they have created a broad no parking zone. Remember, at first the sheriffs had created like a one-way zone around Nancy Guthrie's house, and it seemed that neighbors, et cetera, were still complaining. And I'm sure that the media presence was incredibly disruptive to all of the neighbors. There were a few days working in court where we had high profile cases that the media presence was disruptive to even getting in to like the parking structure or to your work building. I can imagine how hard it would be to live with that for 3 weeks. However, the media coverage of the story does help bring new leads forward potentially. And so there's a balance to it when you are looking at a missing person case, though we are getting to the point in time in this case where it is going to be an investigation and no longer really considered a missing person case, as we are getting so many days on that the nature of the investigation will naturally shift, unfortunately. However, Savannah Guthrie and her family want their mother home. They want to know where she is, and really whatever that means for them. And we're going to see Savannah talk about that in her latest videos. So they've created quite a large no parking zone. Most of the media just bounced after that. And I think we're not going to see a lot of media outside of Nancy's home, but I don't think we're going to see investigators going back and forth to the home either way. So what else do we know that has happened between talking about this last week and talking about this week? I have seen numerous individuals reporting that their sources within inside the Pima County Sheriffs have said that Pima County is going to be reallocating resources. However, they have clarified and stated expressly that the investigation will remain open until Nancy is located or all leads are exhausted. Just because a month or, getting into a month, unfortunately, is a long period of time for someone to be missing, it is not a long period of time in the world of an investigation with so much they still have to go through. So I'm waiting to start seeing the headlines that this is a cold case and what have you. That's just not accurate from my perspective. Why? Because we also learned this week, Thursday, February 26, 2026, that the FBI has gathered more than 10,000 hours of video. If you still have 10,000 hours of video that they are parsing through, if you are still parsing through cell phone tower dumps with thousands, if not tens of thousands of hits on those cell phone towers, and you are still waiting on mixed DNA samples, there are still viable investigative leads that just aren't done yet. So no, I do not think this is a cold case, even though attention might not be on it as forcefully in the news cycle. There are still quite a lot of avenues for law enforcement to pursue. Remember, when we're looking at the Adelson case and the murder of Dan Markell, those cell phone tower dumps were critical, but it took a year almost to really get to an arrest in that case. That's the same with the Corey Richins case. It took a year and a few months to arrest Corey Richins because of the cell phone data they needed to go through. We still have not heard anything about the multiple cars that were taken and processed. So there are still lots of investigative leads. It is going to be a case that we will start seeing not in the headlines as much. I really caution against a couple things here. One, starting to call it a cold case. I think that's A, not accurate, and B, it lets people think that maybe they don't need to keep an eye on something they hear or something they see, because thinking that there's maybe only one individual involved in this is, I'm not necessarily on board with that. And eventually people will talk. And I hope more than anything that at some point the Guthrie family has answers. They deserve answers. Everyone does. So I hope that the media does not start shifting the narrative into this is a cold case, because people won't be keeping an ear out or an eye out any longer. And I hope that that doesn't happen. And when we are looking at new investigative leads, you might have seen headlines this week that there is new Ring camera footage. Emily, why are we doing this? We just are. There's new Ring camera footage. I don't know if it's actually a Ring camera, but it was obtained by Fox News Digital, and it shows a car driving by. The timestamp on it says that it's from February 1st around 2:30 a.m. Am I going to play that for you? No. Why not? Because I'm not sure that the two are necessarily connected. The sheriffs have said it's outside of their canvas area, but that's not what I am relying on. The sheriffs had set up a 2-mile canvas area. This Ring video is from more than 2.5 miles away from Nancy Guthrie's home. But here's what I am relying on. That video came out early last week. However, the sheriff's department and the FBI have not put out any be on a lookout for a type or make of vehicle. They have not put out any additional information about other Ring cameras that might have caught the same vehicle. Things that we saw happening in the Kohberger case that we are not seeing here. They are not giving this any credence whatsoever, and they have not asked for more information, which means whatever information law enforcement has that has allowed them to rule this out, whether the route doesn't make sense, whether the timing doesn't make sense, whether they know at the time of this video at 2:30 a.m. that Nancy Guthrie was still in her home because her Apple Watch had not disconnected yet, whatever they have, they do not consider this an investigative lead that they need the public's help on. So I am not assuming that the two are connected, because it is far in distance and the timeline doesn't seem to match what we have been told about the timeline in this case. So when you look at the video that has been shared by Fox News Digital, it has a timestamp right after 2:30 a.m. and then another timestamp at like 2:36 a.m. However, from the digital evidence that has been shared from the sheriff's department, the security software at the home did not detect a person until 2:12 a.m. And Nancy's, we are told, pacemaker disconnected from her iPhone at 2:28 a.m. I don't see them getting an 84-year-old into a vehicle and more than 2.5 miles away in like 3 to 5 minutes. It does not connect for me. So I'm not surprised that we haven't seen the FBI say, be on the lookout for this make and model of vehicle, and that they hadn't obtained that information before. It seems like the headline for sake of a headline, and those are really my thoughts about it. I don't think that the two are necessarily connected. We will be getting back to my other concern with what can happen in the gap between a crime happening and an arrest happening, because we're going to talk about Idaho more in just a minute, and we're going to talk about the defamation lawsuit that came out of the Brian Koberger case, essentially, and my concerns that as actual factual information dries up, that we are going to see more people filling in the gaps with salaciousness, speculation, and sometimes defamation. I'm not saying that that's happening here. I'm worried that it will. But what we do know is that Savannah Guthrie has talked about the family putting up more of a reward and talking more in depth about her mom's disappearance. So there are two updates from Instagram that both happened over the last week. We're going to take a look at both of those together now. The first video we are looking at, Savannah Guthrie put up on Instagram in the middle of last week, letting everyone know that the family had added $1 million to the reward for information leading to the return of Nancy Guthrie. Let's take a look.
Hi there. I'm coming on to say it is day 24 since our mom was taken in the dark of night from her bed. And every hour and minute and second and every long night has been agony since then of worrying about her and fearing for her and aching for her. And most of all, just missing her. Missing her. We know that millions of you have been praying. So many people have been praying of every faith and no faith at all, praying for her return. And we feel those prayers. Please keep praying without ceasing. We still believe. We still believe in a miracle. We still believe that she can come home. Hope against hope. As my sister says, we are blowing on the embers of hope. We also know that she may be lost. She may already be gone. She may have already gone home to the Lord that she loves.
Which is a really hard thing.
And is dancing in heaven with her mom and her dad, and with her beloved brother, Pierce, and with our daddy. And if this is what is to be, then we will accept it. But we need to know where she is. We need her to come home. For that reason, we are offering a family reward of up to $1 million for any information that leads us to her recovery. All of the information about this reward and the details is in the caption below.
And that includes
you can call the
FBI
1-800 tip line. You can be anonymous if you want. Someone out there knows something that can bring her home. Somebody knows. And we are begging you to please come forward now. We also know that we are not alone in our loss. We know there are millions of families that have suffered with this kind of uncertainty. And for that reason today, we also are donating $500,000 to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children for their work in helping families who are coping with loss and actively looking for those who are lost.
Yeah, the unknown is
we are
such
hoping
a
that
horrible part
the
of all
attention
of
that
this.
has been given to our mom and our family will extend to all the families like ours who are in need and need prayers and need support. So please, if you hear this message, if you've been waiting and you haven't been sure, let this be your sign. to please come forward, tell what you know, and help us bring our beloved mom home so that we can either celebrate a glorious, miraculous homecoming or celebrate the beautiful, brave, and courageous and noble life that she has lived. Please be the light in the dark. Thank you.
At the end of this message, and there's one more we're going to take a look at, but at the end of this message, you can tell that Savannah Guthrie shifted to speaking directly to someone, an unknown someone, but someone has Nancy Guthrie. Someone took Nancy Guthrie out of her home. So you can hear that Savannah shifts to speaking one-to-one to that unknown person. Now is the time. This is the time to come forward. You can be anonymous. There is a reward. Come forward and tell what you know. And it is a very specific and direct plea to just bring her mom home, whether that is to celebrate her life or to celebrate that she is home alive, and acknowledges that in this video, which cannot be easy. But I hope that all the attention, which is why I've played her videos on the podcast, for those that see it here who don't have social media, who aren't on Instagram, that might see what's going on in this case. And if anyone out there knows, there is an anonymous tip line and a reward. We're going to take a look at the next video, but as we get into over a month since Nancy Guthrie was taken from her home, it does get harder. And so I think the new reward information probably stimulated quite a lot of additional tips and information, and maybe it will continue to do so. And I hope so. The next Instagram video was just put out, I believe, on Friday as we are recording this. It could have been early Saturday morning, but is more recent than the one that we just watched that came out in the middle of last week. It has the same information in the description. Nancy Guthrie is wearing the same outfit. I suspect this is a continuation, or at least recorded at the same time as a video we saw a couple days ago.
But we need to know where she is. We need her to come home. For that reason, we are offering a family reward of up to $1 million for any information that leads us to her recovery. All of the information about this reward and the details is in the caption below. You can call the 1-800 tip line. You can be anonymous if you want. Someone out there knows something that can bring her home. Somebody knows. And we are begging you to please come forward now.
Unfortunately, there is not much more that is known. There aren't as many updates. There haven't been any more interviews that I have seen from the sheriff. There is going to be less information, unfortunately, until we start to see results from technological searches and results from the DNA. But hopefully we will know as we go forward what happens with this case, and we will still be getting updates, even though most of the media has left, and it is unfortunately a month in without a lot of new information. But we will see, and it is something I'm going to be keeping an eye on. I appreciate how kind all of the Lawnards have been about trusting that we can get the grounded information here and kind of strip away everything else, because there is so much else in the conversation around this case, but it's hard to actually put your finger on just what is known. And that has been frustrating at times during this investigation. And I don't know if that's going to get better. And unfortunately, when investigations do not have a quick answer, that tends to fill in the gaps with speculation and sensationalism, which, Lawnard, I know that you hate it as much as I do. And that is why we are going to talk about this next case, because sometimes it's nice to actually see resolution on when you fuck around, you find out. And that is exactly what happened to the TikTok psychic. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry. I will link the entire playlist of my coverage of this case down below. I will also give you a very brief overview, the TLDR, if you will, right now. We have been covering this case on the Stream channel since it was filed on December 21st, 2022. A professor from the University of Idaho was accused by a TikTok creator of orchestrating the murders of the 4 University of Idaho students prior to Bryan Kohberger being arrested. However, even after Bryan Kohberger was arrested, and alas, even after Bryan Kohberger pled guilty, she did not relent, the TikTok creator, in accusing the professor of orchestrating those murders. When this finally went to trial, February 23rd in federal court in Boise, Idaho, the TikToker was still representing themselves. The professor was represented by counsel Wendy Olson, who we saw in the Bryan Kohberger case representing the Media Coalition when there was some fights going on with the non-dissemination order. The reason I do not name the TikTok creator is because A, I think when you do just horrific things, well, I don't want your name to populate in the video that I'm talking about, in the transcript of the video that I'm talking about. No, there is no respect on the name. And for the professor, I hope that this resolution will start to shift the Google results when you go and look for this professor's name, showing not just the horrific accusations, but actually that she was vindicated. Because from the time that the TikToker was making these accusations, there were so many news articles parroting that somebody on TikTok was saying that this professor was the one who had a relationship with a student, one of the victims, and that's why she orchestrated the murder, and it blew up like wildfire. Well, when this defamation case got filed, the TikTok creator decided to represent herself, tried to countersue, that got yeeted. And the professor talked about the devastation that this rained down on her life, her work, her family, her sense of security. And of course, she sent multiple cease and desist, and the TikTok creator created content out of them and pretended to wipe her ass with them. Well, the jury has decided to do almost the same thing. So this went to trial just on damages because the judge had already found liability. There was no defense here. There was nothing defensible. And so on summary judgment motions, it was found by the judge that the TikTok creator had defamed the professor, but then it had to go to trial on damages. And that's all the jury had to consider. Though from the reporting out of the trial from Atuzzi's channel and others, and from what I've seen in the minute orders from court, and don't worry, we'll talk about the transcripts on live stream when we have them and after the Corey Richins trial, the TikToker was still arguing that she believed that the professor orchestrated these murders, that it wasn't her fault that the FBI didn't investigate the professor, and that because she is psychic, she does not need any further proof than her tarot and oracle card readings because she is clairvoyant and claircognizant, and that's enough. Also, that because the professor had a GoFundMe, that shows that she hasn't actually been damaged. Well, the jury called bullshit on all of it and returned one of the largest defamation verdicts, not only that I have ever seen, but one of the largest that has ever been rendered, and definitely the largest that has ever been rendered in the state of Idaho. All right, so we are looking at the special verdict form from February 27th, 2026. Again, just on damages. We, the jury, being duly impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled case, do find our verdict as follows. Question 1. Do you find by a preponderance of the evidence that the defendant's false statements that the plaintiff had an inappropriate romantic relationship with a student damaged plaintiff? Check yes or no. The jury checked yes. Question 2. State the amount of compensatory damages. Those are the ones to compensate for the damage. The compensatory damages related to the defendant's false statements that plaintiff had an inappropriate romantic relationship with a student. $1 million. Go to question 3. Question 3. Do you find by clear and convincing evidence that defendant's false statements that plaintiff had an inappropriate romantic relationship with a student warrant punitive damages. Those are the punishment damages. Punitive damages. Check yes or no. The jury checked yes. Question 4, state the amount of punitive damages related to the defendant's false statements that plaintiff had an inappropriate romantic relationship with the students. $2.5 million. So for essentially claim number 1, defamation, we're looking at $3.5 million. And that's not count 2. Count 2. Question 5. Do you find by preponderance of the evidence that defendant's false statements that plaintiff orchestrated the murder of 4 students at the University of Idaho damaged plaintiffs? Check yes or no. Yes. Question 6. State the amount of compensatory damages related to defendant's false statements that plaintiff orchestrated the murder of the 4 University of Idaho students. $1.5 million. Go to question 7. Do you find by clear and convincing evidence that the defendant's false statements that plaintiff orchestrated the murder of 4 students at the University of Idaho warrant punitive damages? Check yes or no. Yes. Question 8. State the amount of punitive damages related to defendant's false statements that plaintiff orchestrated the murder of 4 students at the University of Idaho. $5 million. That is a total of $10 million. That is in the realm of the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard damages. Remember, theirs was reduced by law and then they ended up settling for just $1 million. But this is in that realm. The punitive damages are not insignificant here. $5 million for accusing the professor of murder, $2.5 million for accusing the professor of having an inappropriate relationship with a student, because yes, a relationship between a professor and a student at their university is inappropriate. Those things were both defamation per se. And the jury said, absolutely not. You cannot go around the internet and accuse people of murder. You cannot go around the internet with absolutely no basis other than you kind of think so and make up what is essentially twisted fan fiction about someone who did nothing other than have a job and have the audacity, I am being sarcastic, have the audacity to have their photo on their department's website, because that is how the TikTok creator started talking about the professor at the University of Idaho. She was going through the university website for the different departments and saw this professor's photo on her department's website and started making videos about her on the internet that went viral and upended this woman's life, and spent years litigating this, in part because the TikTok creator chose to represent herself. It's too bad her lawyer couldn't have told her that this was the ending. We've been talking about it since 2022, but she apparently didn't see that coming. I'm glad that the jury said enough is enough and put their foot down. The next phase of this litigation is going to be recovery. Well, we know that the TikTok, former creator, because she's been kicked off of the TikTok platform, but the former TikTok creator does have sources of income that can be garnished. That was disclosed during trial and in some of the filings that we will be going over after the Corey Richards case. But I didn't want to make you wait until the Corey Richards case was over to, circle back on what the jury had awarded, because this has been such a frustrating journey watching a pro se defendant throw every kind of motion, even if they were not valid, at the court to delay this litigation over and over and over again. I can't imagine how much money the professor might have spent in legal fees. I can't imagine the toll that this took and the absolute frustration that it takes this many years in litigation to get a result. And then the next part of the litigation is trying to recover on that. Now, could the TikToker and the professor choose to settle? They could, but based on all of the hearings that I have attended in this case and listening to the creator talk about this case, I think it is unlikely that a settlement can be reached to reduce the damages. But yes, that can happen. That's what we saw happen in the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case. Can they just start garnishing the income she has coming in? Yes. How long would it take to garnish $10 million? Quite a while. but they can garnish it for as long as humanly possible. Will the professor be able to move on from this? I imagine the impact of this is going to change the way she lives her life going forward. But I hope that at least the amount of outlets that I have seen pick up this damages reward, because of the amount of the damages reward, the fact that it is a $10 million award of damages is going to garner significant headlines. And maybe that will at least start to balance what will happen if you ever look up this professor's name going forward, that you will see that somebody actually was punished for what they said, and that it was found in court multiple times that what she said was not true. And I hope that even though that is not a complete remedy, because court can't always make people whole, especially when the damages go well beyond being able to compensate with money, but I hope that at least the vindication helps moving on. And I'm sure we will see an absolute filing frenzy of documents style tantrum about this reward. I am sure we will see ill-conceived ChatGPT motions for appeal. I am sure there will be a bankruptcy filing at some point. However, some of these things cannot be gotten around even in bankruptcy. So even though garnishment is the slowest way to go, there is some income there that can be easily garnished. And well, if she ever makes any money on social media again, that can be garnished too. So after following this entire case, I hope that it closes a chapter for the professor. I also hope that it is just a word of caution that there is a difference between covering things that are coming out, covering what is happening in the news or in cases, and accusing people of crimes. I didn't think that distinction was that hard to find. I was wrong. Apparently, for some, it is a very difficult distinction to find. And unfortunately, there were way too many media outlets that were willing to run with wild accusations and be like, well, this TikToker said it. We're not saying it, they said it. We'll go after them. They're the speaker. We're just reporting on what people are saying on social media. And at some point, that's just irresponsible. So I hope as we see other cases, including the Guthrie investigation, that a focus on the facts, a focus on reasonable questions without accusations helps. I hope that it helps. And I think that the $10 million jury award reminds people that A, people see through this stuff, and B, there are boundaries. Good for this jury. Good for this jury. I'm glad. I really am. I am happy that this is the result they came to. It is exactly what was warranted. And I'm glad that they saw that this isn't just, oh, well, somebody said something on social media. It's no big deal. It can be devastating to people. And I can't imagine just doing your job and then all of a sudden your entire life is upended because somebody said something on a video. So I hope that it is a reminder, but also it gives me a little bit of hope that juries see through this shit. They see through it. They see through the bullshit. And they see that this actually can impact people's lives. And I'm glad that they did. Law nerds, you know what's going to impact our lives the next week? Corey Richins' trial. Yep. Corey Richins' trial. And you know what the biggest impact for me this week was with the Corey Richins' trial? That it took me forever to get caught up on Traitors. Yes, Emily, we still need to talk about Traitors. I don't know how long this podcast episode is at this point, but it doesn't fucking matter. Law Nerd, a quick thank you to our sponsor, Shopify, not only for being the platform that we have built the Law Nerd shop on, and for making sure our latest launch went off without a hitch, because Law Nerds, y'all were on the Law Nerd shop like that the second we dropped our latest Law Nerd Love merch, and Shopify kept it easy. So it's no wonder that Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses just like the Law Nerd shop and around 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Because It's easy for the shop owner and it's easy for the shopper. And trust me, I do plenty of both. And with all of the built-in Design Studio templates, you can build Shopify to match your style and have a beautiful online store, all just baked right in. And if you ever get stuck, Shopify has 24/7 award-winning customer support, so they're always there if you need something. And especially if you get stuff done super late at night like me. So whether you're just starting to sell or you're ready to switch to an easier solution, Shopify's got you covered. So Lawnerd, see less carts go abandoned and more sales go with Shopify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/Lawnerd. Go to shopify.com/Lawnerd. That's right, shopify.com/Lawnerd. Let's get back to it. So pop culture docket for a minute, because we need to talk about Traitors. If you have not watched the Traitors season finale, I am going to do my best for no spoilers, because I'm not going to talk about winning this game. I'm going to talk about my love for this show and how delayed I felt in getting to watch the finale and how off of social media I had to be. And I have not gotten to finish the reunion yet. But first, how did no one know that Johnny Weir and Tara Lipinski were besties? Are none of you ever watching the Winter Olympics? Ever? Like, how did no one clock that these two were besties going in? I think it was a solid game strategy for the two of them to act as acquaintances, but not besties. But how did no one know? I was stunned. I feel like I've been watching the two of them do ice skating commentary for my entire life. I mean, both of them are significantly younger than I am, but I can't remember ice skating prior to Tara Lipinski and Johnny Weir doing commentary because it is so amazing and iconic. That's not true. I actually do remember watching Tara Lipinski win in the Olympics. So maybe that just ages me a bit, but how did no one know that they were besties? I was stunned that no one in that house clocked it. Shocking to me. Y'all aren't Winter Olympic fans, and that's what you get. Also, I am a stan of both of them. I love their friendship. I love their commentary. I also loved seeing kind of the fish out of waterness of competitive athletes in a different competitive environment, because competitive reality TV and competitive sports are not the same thing. And it was fascinating to watch a little bit of the fish out of water of the way that these kind of social competition games go down, whether it is from Survivor or Big Brother or Love Island or what have you. And it was interesting to see that aspect of the show, but I am still baffled that no one clocked that they were besties. Baffled. And then as we get toward the end of the show, that no one was listening to them. I was screaming at my television. The thing is that Tara and Johnny are athletes. They are operating like athletes, that full athlete brain, which means they're not just going to be wishy-washy. When they know, they know. And they knew. And they knew. And it was crazy watching them know and tell everyone that they knew. And then everyone discounted. I was like, what are we doing? In Tara and Johnny, we trust. What are we doing? I'm still baffled. But what we have seen in the Traitors Castle is that those that group into reality TV kind of group by network or type of show. You get the gamers that kind of group together, those that have done things like Big Brother and Survivor and what have you. And then you get like the Bravo Lebs and the Housewives that kind of group together. And then it seems to get really hard for those that don't fit into one of those properties, like Eric, like Kristen from Top Chef. You have folks from other properties that just don't always fit in with those groupings as easily. And you can see how difficult that can be. You also have people playing the game entirely differently. You have people playing this game in the most like dead ass, I am winning Survivor type of a way, which I'm here for. I'm a huge Survivor fan. Dr. B and I actually had the Survivor theme song featured at our wedding. It's a whole story that we will talk about another day. If you know, you know. But huge Survivor fan. But you also have some that are just like, Oh my God, I'm so happy to be here. I get like a contract to come and be on a show with a bunch of other people from a bunch of other shows. I've already done other shows. Like, I'm just happy to be here. And then some are like, I have outfits for every single one of these days, which is why it is a crime that Chanel Ayan was voted off so early in a prior season of Traitors, because you know that she rolled to Scotland with like 17 suitcases full of just glam. And so some are like, this is a fashion show. If I get voted off, I will not get to wear, insert whatever outfit it is here. And it was funny at the beginning of the reunion to see Lisa Rinna talk about that. She was like, I just wanted to wear the clothes. I had strategized these outfits and I just wanted to wear all the clothes. So you also have people playing the game in fundamentally different ways. Some want more screen time. Some want to have a kiki with their friends. And some are just like, I packed the greatest outfits. The fact that we didn't get to see the rest of Caroline Stanbury's outfits was also criminal. You know what? I have not really seriously considered suing the network, but maybe Caroline getting voted off and us not getting to see the rest of her looks is emotional damages for me. Maybe that's where we're at with this, because I was so bummed. I was so bummed about it. So when we're looking at a show like Traitors, A, I love a reality game show. B, I love the dynamic of bringing in personalities from not just the reality TV world, but from all different walks of life, including Donna Kelsey. I loved watching my girl Dolores Catania as one of the winners last year. We got to see all the outfits. And then I love that there's Traitors versions in the UK and Ireland and Australia and elsewhere. I love it. It is one of my favorite shows on TV. Well, it's kind of like a game of Among Us where everybody's trying to vote someone off, trying to figure out who's the traitor. It's basically Among Us with some fun twists and way better fashion. I have no idea how everyone does those filming days. I don't know why the breakfast salmon became such a huge deal this year, but it did. I loved the cast. There were people on the cast this year that I had not seen on things before because they were on properties that I haven't watched. There were people on the cast that I have been a stan of, like Tara Lipinski and Johnny Weir, which also the timing of this season rolling out as they were rolling into the Olympics is just NBC, scheduling, casting gold. But I loved seeing the way that they played the game. And of course, Ellen Cumming is just A, delightful host. B, the fashion is so good. And C, the drama. He brings the drama and the murder. I love all of it. So if you need a break from 17 hours a day of the Corey Richins trial, may I suggest Traitors on Peacock? I wish I had a sign up for you. Hopefully there's like a 30-day free trial because now all of the season is out. And so you can now watch the entire thing together, which is always how I would suggest doing it. Get a 30-day whatever, get Peacock, go binge watch all of Traitors just back to back to back, because now you can watch this season, last season, the season before. It's fantastic. And if you like reality TV, you will see people from all the different reality TV walks of life that you enjoy. I absolutely loved it. The drama of the finale is something we will have to talk about another day. It was just so great. It was such good TV, and you can see the different ways people chose to play the game. And the finale episode highlighted how different group dynamics will operate and the fashion. I loved it. So no spoilers in the chat, but let me know. Well, Emily, comment section. I know, but I record with the members, so chat. No spoilers in the comment section. Let me know as best you can without spoilers what you thought of the finale, the drama. And Law Nerds, I know you can do hard things because you've gotten through a full week of trial without name calling in the chat, and it's been really tempting sometimes. So I appreciate you for being here. I appreciate you for doing hard things. I will see you live for the Corey Richins trial bright and early. Well, this drops on Monday and we're going to be together on Monday. So bright and early after this episode airs, make sure you have the Law Nerd app at lawnerdapp.com to get notifications. A, when stream is actually starting, when key witnesses take the stand, which I didn't think were going to happen so early in this case. And then I was stunned that we had such important key witnesses very early last week in trial. And I was like, no way. So we send a notification when that happens. And well, when we get to the defense case in chief, I think we might see the defendant testify. I'll let you know if I change my mind throughout the trial, but the defense indicated early on that the defendant was going to testify, and I really think she might in this one. So we'll see what happens. So make sure you have the app, Launard app at launardapp.com. Thank you for joining me. I will be with you, all week. I'll see you all week. Cheers. Thanks for letting me chat about all the things. Hopefully the updates were helpful. And, well, I'll see you on stream shortly. Just head over there after this because that's exactly what's going to happen. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being a Launard. We will be back in a week. We're going to take a brief break next Monday because trial things. And then I will see you back on the podcast. But don't forget, the case briefs drop every day that give you a summary of the trial day before in the Corey Richins case. You can find those all right here. See you soon. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss updates on your favorite cases, you're going to need the Launard app at launardapp.com. That way you can stay in the loop on the cases that matter most to you, and you never know when you're going to catch feelings for a new case. So make sure you get it for free on iOS and Android. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a Launard.